How's everyone doing? Excellent. Cool. We got a good panel. I figured I'd sit on the edge.
Hey.
So that way I can talk to all these guys at the same time. That's what I do. All right, so I'm Brian Douglas, B-Dougie on the internet. As Phil mentioned, open source is what I do, and also early employee at Netlify, and previously at GitHub. But that's enough about me. We'll go down this way, and why don't we do intro, say your name, and your connection to the edge.
Hi, I'm Ryan Dahl. I'm the CEO at Dino, and we build a JavaScript runtime. And we also build, we build this open source JavaScript runtime, and then we build this Dino deploy, which is a serverless system.
Great. I'm Matt Billman, CEO and co-founder of Netlify. We've, of course, been spending many years thinking about how to get the front end closer to the edge, at first through statically built front ends and later through several different iterations of edge runtimes. Latest successfully through a great partnership with Dino, lots of thoughts on what the web should look like.
Hi, my name is Sunil. I used to be on the React team. I also used to be in Cloudflare. I see that it still says that I do. I've been an enthusiast of the edge compute thing for a few years, and now I'm helping developers make ambitious applications with edge runtimes. Big fan of literally everyone on this panel right now.
Oh, shucks. Cool, so this panel's about edge functions, and it's a term that I've heard for a while. I think I originally had a conversation with Matt on my podcast, Jamstack Radio, plug, always be plugging. And can we define the term? Sunil, can you take a crack at it? Like edge functions, edge runtimes, what are we?
Edge runtimes. Would you rather fight one server-sized application or 1 million isolate-sized components, functions? It takes one giant thing and spreads it across networks across the world and runs little JavaScript for you near the edge.
That's pretty concise. Anyone else to add to that, or is that pretty good?
I mean, I would say that there's a lot of different takes on it and been a lot of variations on it, right? Like the edge in the sense of the kind of CDN-based edge that we're building at Netlify and Dino's building at Dino Deploy and so on, has started out sort of as more traditional CDN workloads where you can put static assets and so on, and then grew in terms of things like Fastly's VCL language. There was some subset of C that you could compile into edge rules and do pretty complex things with, right? And then Cloudflare sort of really popularized the idea with their Workers implementations of what if you could use JavaScript as a language on that edge layer instead of VCL, and Fastly popularized the idea of what if you could run WebAssembly on the edge. And we're seeing a lot of experimentation across the whole industry and what does an edge runtime look like? What kind of languages should it support? And what are we actually going to build with it?
Yeah, that's a good question, which is, so moving on, we've had CDNs for a long time, and now we have edge runtimes on the CDN. So can we talk through use cases on why do you need the data closer to the user?
I think what we're seeing is the application server used to be a Ruby on Rails application that ran in US East, and you would put a CDN around it. And what we're seeing is actually more and more we're trying to move that application code out closer to the user, geo-replicated across the world. And I think we're not quite there. You kind of get these situations where you do kind of path rewriting, or maybe you do A/B testing, or you're setting some cookies, kind of some simple applications. But more and more, I think we're going to be moving the full application server out to the edge.
Yeah, I think in general, we are going through this motion where some of the core building blocks we used to think a lot about as developers are kind of disappearing as core building blocks and abstractions, right? Like, so when I got started developing, you would really think about my server and my database, right? Like, and that was kind of like how you built systems for the web. You would run code on a server that would sit and talk to a database, and then you would have like a staging server and a production server, and that was it, right? Like, now we're seeing in some way both of those concepts fragment and disintegrate. When people are building with a Jamstack approach, you're thinking about your front end and your user experience, but you're no longer thinking about what server is that running on. You deploy part of it as pre-built assets, part of it as serverless functions, and now part of it as edge functions. And you're typically not thinking about like one central database anymore. Instead, you have all these different APIs and services that contains part of your data. You might be using a service for logins and authentication, and that kind of has its own database that you don't really think about. You might be using Stripe for payments, and that has all your plans and subscriptions in a database that you don't really think about. And then you had a bit of data that's your own that ties all these things together. And I think part of moving towards that level of abstraction is what takes us away from the concept of your old application server running next to your central database, since there's no longer a central database and no longer a central application server. And that also starts making it much more interesting to see a lot of these kind of things that we do need to do on the fly to serve a web application. How can we move the code that runs that as close to the user that consumes that code as possible?
Yeah, and Sunil, your time at Cloudflare, like, it changed. My perspective of Cloudflare changed when workers got shipped. So you saw a lot of use cases while you were working in that directly. So do you have any examples of folks leveraging the edge?
The easy one is just make your website faster by pushing it onto the edge, by having it being served from, I assume, like a mile away from here. So it brings down the latency to some ridiculous number like 9 milliseconds. At that point, it's actually faster to just go to the network and fetch the website instead of like hydrating it from like a browser-side cache. The other interesting one that I've started noticing is Cloudflare has this thing called durable objects, which gives you a guarantee of being able to connect to one memory space, one isolate that's closest to most people who like connect to it. Which is kind of a revisiting of the older model of saying like there's just one server that everyone connects to, which is interesting in itself. But it's nice because this now, again, does the peanut butter spread model across the world, which is that it's not just for people in San Francisco. If somebody in London actually tries to connect to it, then it finds the node closest to them. And this is something you can only do with a managed runtime / platform like any of these edge platforms. And that's interesting. The durable object thing is particularly interesting because it now makes real-time applications really, I want to say, accessible to regular developers like me. Like, I'm a JavaScript developer. I'm not really good at writing code, but it's nice when the platform gives me a primitive for it. So every time I've been finding like new use cases for the edge runtime, I get excited because otherwise everyone is like, well, okay, the edge is cool, but what do we use it for? And one of the answers is like real-time. That's the thing that I've been focusing on.
Yeah, so I heard a quote recently about the bleeding edge. There's a lot of Band-Aids on the bleeding edge. And so the next question for y'all, whoever wants to take this next, is there's challenges. So like, what are some challenges we have to get past to make edge runtime adoption more mainstream?
Yeah. Well, the big one is the one that we were just discussing, which is data. Like the CAP theorem is immutable. At one point, you have to spend 200 milliseconds to go across the world to hit like a database, right? So any solution in that space will have trade-offs, and it's a question of what trade-offs do you have. Do you trade off some availability, some partitionability? Are you okay with some stale data for some things? I think data is going to be a big defining factor of the next 5 years or so.
Fundamentally, like being at the edge is a latency optimization. And so you can run your application servers, say in Australia or Japan, to be closer to their users. But if you have a centralized database and say you have an e-commerce shop that you need to do select star from products on, if you need to then reach across the world to do that query, then that negates any of the latency, any of the gains that you have from running that application closer to the users. So ultimately, we need some form of geo-replicated state in order to really move to the ultimate goal here, which is to kind of move our full applications into this serverless at edge environment. And companies like CockroachDB and products like Google Spanner show that this is possible, and I think we'll see other products like that in the future.
I think there'll always be a set of trade-offs, right? Like I've said many times, like we run our own edge platform with servers all over the world, but we still run our core API in the same region as the core database, or in the same different set of availability zones as the core database, right? Like since if we took those application servers and we just moved them to our edge, everything would get much slower, right? Like because typically when you get a request to that API, it needs to make multiple round trips to the database, and it would just slow down everything. And I think there's a set of applications where people will move that data to the edge as well. But there's also a large set of larger applications where that's just not viable. Like even just from a cost perspective, if you want to truly replicate all your data in that many regions for really big data sets, that's just not an option. So I think to take advantage of that edge layer, then it becomes much more commonly a question of caching and cache invalidations and how we build patterns around that. Again, I think there'll totally be use cases where these kind of globally distributed databases become the way to go, but I think there'll be a lot more use cases where it becomes about patterns of caching APIs close to the edge functions and figuring out the right invalidation patterns and the right trade-offs between simple models that works for developers and that guarantees consistencies, and then models that trade off some level of staleness for faster performance for the end users.
Yeah, caching is an easy problem. We're already past that.
No, it's the invalidation tends to be a little harder.
Excellent. Yeah, so I guess more on the money question, which is self-proclaimed regular developer. I'm a regular developer myself. When can I start using this? Like, when am I production ready? Give me a roadmap. Next quarter?
You know what, this is such a dope question. I was just thinking about this, that one of the successes of the JavaScript ecosystem was by Node. I'd love to meet the creator someday, such great software. But it was also when NPM was created, because suddenly everybody could share, there was a first-class concept of a package that you could share with people. And there was years of innovation of people just creating software, putting it out there, having other people use it. It even led to a lot of social mobility. People noticed that, hey, even if I'm in the corner of India, I can create something and be present on the world stage for doing this thing. It turns out that a lot of packages on NPM right now don't really work on a bunch of these new edge runtimes. So it feels like there is now going to be a phase of a couple of years where people either recreate a number of the popular utilities, create new edge native friendly frameworks. Remix comes to mind, right? Like it's one of these, runs in any JavaScript runtime. It'll run in your service worker or whatever. So it feels like there's now a phase where we are now going to flesh out the ecosystem for, as you said, production usage. Nobody wants to use a weekend project that someone put out on GitHub. It has to walk through the fires of production, as it were, to be battle ready. And I think that's going to be exciting over the next couple of years.
I think, it's interesting, because I think what's happening is we're raising the abstraction layer. Like, we used to operate at this kind of Linux VM layer, and we're kind of raising this up into this JavaScript winter CG type environment that's not necessarily compatible with a lot of the software that previously existed. And yeah, they'll take some time to get packages that use that.
Yeah, and then I'll say that it'll also be a very gradual transition, right? Like at Netlify now, we're already seeing users serving millions of requests out of edge functions, but typically less as a building block for here's our full application, and more for doing edge transformations, personalization, authentication, localization, all of these kind of use cases. And I think we've seen something like 3x month-over-month growth in the usage of edge functions over the last couple of months. So pretty exciting to just follow the actual real-world use cases out there. that will start just adding it as an extra element and then gradually move from there.
So the answer to your question is put parts of your website within the next quarter. We're working on the rest of it at the moment. There's a lot of work to do. But you should use a lot of it today.
Excellent. So runtimes are here. Like we're seeing sort of a shift in interest in the industry now. So like what are the possibilities that unlock now that we have these runtimes that we can build on top of?
Sorry, say it again?
Yeah, so we have new runtimes. What's the possibilities that get unlocked with these runtimes?
I love systems that are great for 0 to 1 to like many. Like I do not want to have to commit a bunch of money or time. Like I just want to like write something and quickly put it out there and see. So the ability to do that for effectively free, like is a big difference from the JavaScript scene from like 15 years ago, where I'd have to get an American credit card from my uncle and like actually make sure it was a serious thing, which I put it out there. I think accessibility for regular developers to build very ambitious planet scale applications, that is the first thing I think. It's pretty cool.
I think there's a general concept around runtimes like Dino built on top of isolates and with strong security guarantees, and the runtimes built around WebAssembly that are similar in the type of possibilities they unlock, just maybe for different sets of developers. I think it allows our systems in some ways to take much more nimble and smarter decisions around scaling, around concurrency, around where to run the code. And I think some of the possibilities we'll see is both running code very close to the end user, but also running the same type of code very close to our data, right? Like, so I'm also expecting to see interesting integrations of tools like Dino into databases and so on, because like I think both paths will be really interesting. Can we get our code running really close to the edge, but can we also flip the script on that sometimes and send code to where our data live and then get simpler results back rather than having to do these multiple round trips and so on. So I think there's that core layer of isolates in the case of JavaScript or WebAssembly in the case of like more general programming languages that will allow us to build architectures where we can over time think more of a query planner, almost thinking about where our code should actually run, and make it pretty easy to ship that code around in a way that you simply couldn't when your core abstraction was a long-running application server.
I think in the immediate future, like, it's better, cheaper, faster. These are optimizations that you can take advantage of, and it's essentially an order of magnitude cost improvement over kind of traditional AWS Lambda solutions, for example, for serverless. I think one thing that wasn't mentioned here is like SSR. So actually taking your React code, which very many websites are written in these days, JSX style code, and actually running that server side and rendering that HTML because of the availability of the easily usable server-side JavaScript runtimes like Dino Deploy or Cloudflare Workers. You can take that React code and run it server-side and actually generate static HTML that you're shipping to your user, but doing that just instead of as a build step ahead of time, doing that just in time on kind of first request. And so I think this has the ability to start getting a lot more 100-page speed scores, Lighthouse scores out there. So, better, cheaper, faster.
Yeah, and that's extremely powerful too as well, because again, I'm also a regular developer. I don't want to worry about runtimes, and I don't need to hook into V8 to figure out how to make stuff work. So like my example, and I've shared this a couple times other places where I live stream on Twitch, I use OBS, which OBS has another runtime as well, and to do chat interactions, like the latency for that, for the experience of somebody in India versus Australia, it's all based on what Twitch chose for their CDN, so probably US West or something. But now we have the solution with make it faster. So like the approachability through Dino and Cloudflare and Netlify giving you something out of the box to sort of play around with. unlocks a lot. We saw this with AWS and S3. Now we're seeing this now with the Jamstack. And why I'm such a big fan of the Jamstack is because I don't have to make those decisions. Someone else can hyper-focus on that tool and ship that too as well. So that was not a question, but it was more adding to the conversation. So what predictions do we have? 2022, we've got these new runtimes, and we got what predictions do you see happening in the industry in tech? So I tried to force a roadmap and see what quarter we could start using this stuff in production, but well, we can use it now. But what are predictions we're seeing in the next couple of years?
I would be curious to your thoughts, and from the two of you here in that sense, between the tension between standardizing through initiatives like the Winter Working Group that gives everybody sort of a baseline, and then building around fully open source projects as Dino's core that can sort of path their own way and do things that might be different from other runtimes. Like, how do you see the tension between like standardization and innovation?
I'm always interested in capabilities because a pattern in the industry has always been that good technology is usually the domain of specialists and people with capital to spend. And then someone like open sources it, or they spend 5 years just commoditizing it, and then it becomes open to everyone else. So I'm starting to feel bullish about like multiplayer collaborative applications because because of the new primitives that suddenly make it very accessible to regular developers who would otherwise have had to figure out how to deal with their farm of servers and Redis and stuff like that. So I think like multiplayer collaborative and the fact that Figma just made 20 billion on it is going to be an appealing choice like for a bunch of people. So I would put a bet on it. Come talk to me about it and let me show you some demos.
Yeah, I think we'll start seeing a lot more web frameworks that are targeting this edge use case. And so what these days might be a little new and unfamiliar is going to become a lot more familiar and standardized and just kind of part of the everyday operating procedure. I think, coming back to the state, like getting either getting the runtime close to the state, as you were saying, or getting the data closer to the runtime itself is also an important thing that is going to be worked out. Kind of state management. I mean, durable objects is one solution in this space that. I think we'll see kind of more iteration in how you manage state in these edge runtimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of those efforts will also lead to interesting new patterns around how we do caching and cache invalidations, right? Like, and how we start standardizing a bit around that, how that can work. I think it'll also push a lot of API companies to build their APIs to be edge run, like to be running on the edge out of the box, right? Like, we're seeing some API providers like Shopify taking big efforts to get their API to respond fast globally, right? Like, and I think that'll start being a common request for API providers. Like, can we just have your API be as fast as possible all over the world? Because then we can start doing more interesting things with your API at the edge.
Yeah.
Actually, on that note, something that I've seen that already happening is technology technology that's been there for a bunch of years, which is streaming responses. Yeah. But nobody really knew how to like use it, but it turns out frameworks are now taking that abstraction for you, and edge runtimes, it turns out, are a great way to do it. So your React applications now start way faster because they can send a few bytes and your head tags like just before they even start rendering the rest of the page. So streaming patterns for APIs and web pages seem to be a thing to keep an eye on. I think that's going to be a thing.
Yeah, WebSockets for that matter too. I mean,
exactly, right? WebSockets have been around forever, and it's been so hard.
Yeah.
Any plans for WebSockets with Dino?
Yeah, it's supported already.
Supported already? All right.
Yeah.
Where am I at?
So real-time ready. Yeah.
Excellent. So we've got a little bit of time left. I'd love for us to go down the line, and for folks who haven't started using edge runtimes, what recommendation blog posts or tutorials, where would you point people to get started and try this out?
I mean, we have a lot of good tutorials on Netlify's blog. They'll make it extremely easy to get started, both from scratch or with existing frameworks like Next.js, using their middleware abstractions and so on. So I would probably, I mean, I also myself like to play around with first principles, right? Like, so I would probably also start just writing some really simple JavaScript code on the edge and get a sense for how that is before jumping into a framework that adds a lot of abstractions on top of it, and try to first build a solid mental model of how does this actually work.
Everyone in JavaScript is on Twitter. And you know what, maybe 2 weeks ago I would have said, yeah, you should totally be on Twitter and see what they're talking about, except Twitter has become a little dicey over the last few days. Like, it's incredibly dramatic for something that's way more low stakes. But it turns out the JavaScript community is extremely online and very accessible, and you can reach out, like you can ping anyone and be like, hey, you want to see a little package I built, or ask questions directly. That's how it's worked for me for the last, like 10 years now. And everyone, like, it's the sort of thing that we just pass on. JavaScript, Twitter, and in general, social media is very, very active. So you should feel free to reach out to anyone there, I think.
I'm not on Twitter. You can email me.
You should be on Twitter.
But
Yeah, you should be on Twitter.
I'd point you at Fresh, which is a Edge first framework, Dino first, Edge first, and yeah, take 1 minute and try out the tutorial, and I'm quite sure you will be shocked at how simple it is.
Awesome. You can DM me. It costs $10 though. All right. Well, thanks so much for the panel talking about Edge Runtimes, folks. Thanks for joining us, and hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Let's give it one of these. All right.